Hello there, and welcome to Dream Past Diaries. I'm truly glad you've made it here. Maybe it's been a long day, or maybe you're the kind of dreamer who prefers to drift off to the sound of quiet thoughts and forgotten mysteries instead of counting sheep. Either way, tonight's story is yours to enjoy. You don't have to do anything now, just rest. Let your thoughts slow, your breath deepen, and your body grow lighter, as if gravity itself has begun to fade away.
In medieval times, life moved with a quiet regularity that is difficult to imagine in our modern world, where every moment seems urgent and every day filled with endless stimulation. And yet, in those centuries, mornings began slowly and without ceremony, often with the dim grey light of dawn creeping through small, roughly hewn wooden shutters, filtering into rooms where floors were made of packed earth or roughly cut wooden planks, and where the walls, darkened by centuries of smoke from open hearths, bore the marks of soot and time, telling a story not of battles or grand events but of the quiet persistence of daily living. And people rose from mattresses stuffed with straw or wool, the bedding lumpy and uneven, their blankets rough against the skin, and they carefully folded them or shook them out before stepping onto the cold floor, feeling the chill of the early hours seep through their simple clothing, linen or wool that had been patched repeatedly over years, and sometimes over decades. And as they dressed, their hands moved slowly, almost ritualistically, fastening ties and adjusting layers, because clothing was precious, made with care and effort, and mending it was an art that every household knew. And once dressed, the inhabitants of the house moved quietly through rooms that were small, low-ceilinged, and filled with the muted smells of smoke, damp wood, and dried herbs, their steps measured and soft to avoid disturbing others who were still waking, while outside, roosters crowed intermittently and the wind rustled through the sparse trees near the village, carrying with it the distant sounds of animals stirring and the faint noises of neighbors beginning their own routines. And often, the first tasks of the day were simple yet essential, like carrying buckets of water from the well, where the pulley creaked slowly as the rope turned, or lighting fires in the hearth with flint and tinder, a process that required patience, as damp would sometimes refuse to catch, and once the flames took hold, they warmed the space and allowed for cooking to begin, though the meals themselves were plain, largely consisting of porridge or bread, occasionally accompanied by salted or dried meats, and herbs grown in small gardens, tended with careful attention, and the act of preparing these foods was repetitive, quiet, and methodical, as grains were ground by hand on stones that grew smoother over years of use, and vegetables were chopped with knives sharpened by constant maintenance, the rhythm of these movements creating a sense of calm familiarity, a hypnotic repetition that defined the day as much as the rising and setting of the sun. And as people worked, they often spoke in low tones, exchanging information about weather and crops, births and deaths, and small village gossip, not for excitement but for the gentle reinforcement of connection, because in these communities, everyone knew each other's lives intimately. The cycles of families and labor, the illness of children, the slow aging of elders, the coming of winter and the turning of seasons, and time itself seemed to pass in waves, not as a strict linear progression, with each day resembling the last, punctuated only by the occasional festival, market, or visitation from a traveling priest or merchant, events that were infrequent enough that they remained noteworthy precisely because they disrupted the otherwise tranquil cadence of existence. And when tasks were complete, people might sit quietly outside or near the window, watching the sun climb higher, noticing the colors of the fields, the movement of livestock, the subtle changes in the wind and sky. And while to a modern observer this might appear monotonous or uneventful, to those who lived it, these details were essential, grounding, a form of meditation that connected them to the earth, the cycles of nature, and to each other in ways that are difficult to describe but deeply comforting. And even when illness or misfortune occurred, it was often accepted with a calm stoicism, for life was fragile but predictable, and people learned to find solace in small, repeated actions, cleaning the hearth, mending clothes, tending the garden, baking bread, drawing water, feeding animals, walking familiar paths between houses and fields, and greeting neighbors in a measured, deliberate manner that reinforced the quiet continuity of the village. And thus, the first hours of a medieval day, though slow, repetitive, and outwardly uneventful, were rich with sensory detail, subtle movement, the soft rhythms of habit, and the understated beauty of lives lived in careful, repetitive harmony with the natural world and with each other, creating a gentle, hypnotic rhythm that, when recounted in full, can transport the listener to that distant, quieter time, where each day passed like the gentle turning of a wheel, slowly, predictably, and soothingly. As the morning gradually gave way to the softer light of mid-morning in medieval villages, the routines of daily life continued in a slow, deliberate rhythm that had been established over generations, and one of the less discussed aspects of these hours was the careful attention paid to domestic tasks that modern readers might consider mundane or trivial, yet in reality occupied a significant portion of the day and contributed quietly but indispensably to the survival and stability of the household. And these tasks began with the tending of small animals, which were kept not for leisure but for sustenance, and often included chickens, goats, sheep, or pigs, which were fed grains, grass, or kitchen scraps, and milked or cleaned with patience and care, requiring hands that were skilled in gentle handling and movements repeated so often that they became almost unconscious gestures, while in larger households or manor houses, domestic servants or family members might sweep the floors, carry water from wells or streams, or tend the fires, maintaining the embers at a steady glow so that meals could be prepared as needed without sudden bursts of effort. And in kitchens, food preparation was a slow and methodical process, with grains ground on stone mills, vegetables washed and chopped, and meats carefully preserved by salting, smoking, or drying. Each action performed with an awareness that waste could not be afforded and that the rhythm of work was as much about consistency as about efficiency, and as these tasks unfolded, the house itself was a focus of attention, with walls occasionally daubed with clay to fill small cracks, floors swept with bundles of twigs, and furniture made from rough-hewn wood repaired or reinforced, all of which required repetition and observation, as small oversights could lead to discomfort, illness, or inefficiency later. And throughout all of this, the senses were gently engaged, the smell of smoke from the hearth mingling with that of fresh bread or porridge, the feel of damp earth or straw underfoot, the quiet murmur of water as it was drawn and poured, the soft cooing of doves or the lowing of cattle in distant fields, and the eyes followed the familiar patterns of the room or yard, noting the subtle changes in light, the wear on the furniture, the growth of plants in window boxes or garden plots, each detail observed not in haste but as part of a continuous attentiveness that defined life itself. And while the work continued, there was often time for reflection or quiet conversation, as neighbors or family members might pause to exchange greetings, discuss the state of crops, or note the passing of seasons. Yet all of this occurred in low, calm voices, never loud or hurried, reinforcing the gentle, predictable cadence of the day. And for children, mornings were spent learning the slow lessons of life, helping with chores or playing quietly nearby while absorbing the rhythms of domestic labor and the subtleties of social interactions, learning to recognize patterns in weather, animal behavior, and household tasks, understanding the importance of repetition, diligence, and observation, and absorbing the stories and knowledge of elders who spoke in measured tones about family history, local customs, or the uses of herbs and natural remedies, weaving education seamlessly into the everyday fabric of existence. And as mid-morning progressed toward noon, the villagers or household members would often engage in small journeys, walking along dirt paths to neighboring fields, wells, or workshops, taking note of the gradual changes in the landscape, the angles of sunlight, the movement of clouds, the rustling of leaves, the occasional bird call, all of which were observed with a calm attentiveness born of long familiarity, and even minor inconveniences, such as a broken wheel, a leaky roof, or a stubborn animal, were approached with patience rather than frustration, for the pace of life demanded neither haste nor dramatics, and in these hours, there was a sense of unity with one's environment, a quiet understanding of the cycles of life, growth, and decay, and an acceptance that each day would follow much the same pattern as the last, with work, nourishment, observation, and rest forming a steady, comforting loop. And in this way, mid-morning in a medieval household was not marked by excitement or sudden events but by an immersive awareness of the ordinary, a slow, hypnotic rhythm that quietly connected individuals to their families, their communities, and the natural world around them, creating a sense of stability and calm, where each repeated gesture, each careful movement, and each attentive glance reinforced the gentle continuity of life, allowing the villagers to move through their days with a peaceful steadiness that is rarely captured in historical accounts but was essential to the functioning of medieval society. And as these hours passed quietly, with tasks completed and patterns maintained, there was a sense of accomplishment not in outward recognition or reward but in the silent, enduring knowledge that the household and village remained intact, sustained, and in harmony with the slow turning of the world. As the day moved toward midday in medieval life, the sun climbing higher and casting a warmer light over the village and surrounding fields, the routines of labor and domestic care continued with a quiet persistence that was both monotonous and comforting. And while modern observers might imagine medieval days as full of sudden drama or grand events, in reality, much of life was spent in repetitive tasks that required patience and careful attention to detail. And one such task was the maintenance of tools and equipment, which could include sharpening knives, scythes, or axes on whetstones, oiling wooden carts, and checking the bindings on harnesses or wheels, actions that demanded careful observation, steady hands, and repeated motions that became almost meditative over time, while in gardens, peasants or household members tended to vegetables and herbs, pulling weeds slowly and evenly, ensuring that plants received sufficient water and sunlight, and observing their growth, in a way that was both practical and soothing, as each leaf and stem marked the passage of days and weeks. And in fields, agricultural work followed the same quiet rhythm, with people sowing seeds, turning soil, or inspecting crops, moving slowly and deliberately, taking note of soil quality, the weather, and the behavior of animals that grazed nearby, and the sounds that accompanied this labor were gentle and repetitive. The scraping of tools against stone or wood, the rustling of leaves in the breeze, the soft bleating of goats or lowing of cattle, the distant crow of a rooster, or the quiet chatter of neighbors exchanging news in subdued voices, for conversation was measured and calm, rarely rising above a soft murmur, as the pace of life encouraged reflection and awareness rather than urgency or excitement. And at midday, meals were often simple and nourishing, taken quietly at a table or on benches, consisting of bread, cheese, porridge, and occasionally meat or fish that had been preserved. Each bite chewed slowly, accompanied by the aroma of freshly baked bread or herbs, the warmth of the sun on the skin, and the gentle sound of wind in the trees. And while eating, people might glance at the surrounding environment, noticing the subtle movements of animals, the patterns of shadows, the flow of water in a nearby stream, or the changing sky, all observed without haste, creating a meditative awareness of the present. And children, if present, often sat nearby, learning through observation and small participation in household tasks, absorbing the quiet discipline of labor and the unspoken rules of social life, internalizing the rhythm of repetition, and gradually understanding the ways in which community, cooperation, and care for the land and animals ensured survival and continuity. And after meals, small tasks resumed in a leisurely fashion, tending fires, mending garments, washing utensils, or repairing fences, each movement deliberate, steady, and gentle. While in the larger context of the village, minor maintenance continued as well, with roads cleared of debris, ditches checked for proper drainage, and communal structures observed for signs of wear or decay, all done with an attentiveness that combined practicality with a subtle aesthetic awareness, noticing the color of stones, the texture of wood, or the interplay of light and shadow. And even during periods of idleness, time was filled with observation and reflection, as people might sit by a window or near the hearth, feeling the sun's warmth, listening to the wind, watching animals, and noticing minute changes in their surroundings, the act of noticing itself becoming a slow, soothing meditation that reinforced the calm continuity of life. And in these hours, the passage of time felt measured not by clocks or bells, which were rare and often inaccurate, but by the movement of the sun across the sky, the shifting patterns of clouds, and the growth of plants and animals, creating a natural rhythm that was both predictable and grounding. And as afternoon approached, the cumulative work of the day provided a sense of quiet satisfaction. As chores were completed, tools were set in their places, fires tended to, and small repairs finished, each task marking a steady progress that required no fanfare or applause but offered a deep, internal sense of order and stability. And through this slow, repetitive, immersive engagement with the daily rhythms of medieval life, people cultivated a sense of presence, patience, and subtle contentment, finding comfort in the quiet regularity of labor, the familiar sounds and sights of their surroundings, the soft cadence of human voices, and the gentle passage of sunlight over fields and rooftops, a pattern that repeated across villages and households throughout the land, unnoticed by chroniclers but deeply formative for those who lived within it, shaping perceptions, behaviors, and the very experience of time itself. And by attending to these slow, deliberate actions, by observing carefully, working steadily, and resting briefly, medieval people lived within a world that was measured, predictable, and, in its own understated way, profoundly calming, offering a rhythm that could lull both the body and mind into a gentle awareness of continuity, order, and quiet satisfaction. As the afternoon in a medieval village unfolded, there existed a pervasive sense of quiet continuity, a rhythm that governed every household and field. And it was during these hours that the minutiae of daily life became particularly apparent, for the world was observed not in moments of drama or spectacle but in the gentle, almost imperceptible changes of the day and the careful attention paid to sustaining both home and community. And so, in the dim light that filtered through wooden shutters, or small glass panes where available, villagers might move slowly from one task to another, carrying water in pails, mending fences, weaving baskets, or tending to small flocks of animals, their movements deliberate, unhurried, and practiced, almost ritualistic in their repetition, while inside cottages, household members sorted grains, ground them for future use, stored dried herbs and salted meats, or repaired garments that had begun to fray along seams, each action done with an attentiveness that was quiet, repetitive, and deeply ingrained. And though these tasks might appear monotonous to an outsider, they provided a subtle meditation on stability and order, reinforcing the gentle rhythms of life that governed the village. And while some people rested briefly during the warmer hours, perhaps sitting by a window or under a tree, observing the slow movement of shadows across the ground, listening to the soft cooing of doves, the distant lowing of cattle, or the occasional creak of a cart on a dirt path, they were never idle in thought, for each moment was an opportunity to notice the gradual passage of time, the growth of plants, the behavior of animals, or the condition of household tools and children. Learning through observation and small participation, moved quietly alongside adults, fetching small items, carrying firewood, or helping with meals, absorbing the rhythms of work and the unspoken lessons of careful attention. As night progressed in a medieval village, a deep and gentle stillness settled over the landscape, and the world seemed to exist in a suspended, measured quiet, where every sound, movement, and shadow became part of a slow, immersive rhythm that defined life for those who inhabited it. And during these hours, most villagers were at rest or engaged in the simplest of tasks, the kind that required minimal effort yet maintained the steady order of household life, and often this included checking fires to ensure they continued to burn safely, closing shutters to guard against cold or wind, and occasionally drawing water or arranging a few items in preparation for the coming day, all done with deliberate, calm motions that reflected both habit and a deep attentiveness to the environment. And the sensory experience of the night was subtle yet rich. The muted warmth of lingering embers, the faint scent of smoked wood or herbs, the soft creak of floorboards as someone moved, the gentle rustle of straw or cloth, the distant sound of animals in pens or pastures, and the quiet hum of the wind through trees or over rooftops, each contributing to a hypnotic awareness of place and time, while conversations, when they occurred, were measured and low, often consisting of brief exchanges about household concerns, minor observations about the weather or crops, or gentle instructions to children, spoken slowly and deliberately to reinforce calm, routine, and attention to detail. And children, if awake, often participated quietly, observing or assisting with minor chores, learning the rhythms of care, repetition, and attentiveness, gradually internalizing the unhurried patterns of life, while elders recounted practical knowledge, historical anecdotes, or advice in a slow, reflective manner, encouraging patience, observation, and subtle understanding rather than excitement. And the night also invited reflection upon the day itself, as individuals might quietly consider the tasks they had completed, the growth of plants, the well-being of animals, the needs of family members, or the condition of tools and structures, a process performed in calm, repetitive thought that reinforced continuity, responsibility, and awareness. And even in moments of stillness, attention was directed toward the natural environment, observing the movement of stars, the phases of the moon, the coolness of the air, or the faint rustle of wildlife, integrating these observations into the quiet cycles of domestic and village life. And through this slow attentiveness, villagers maintained a sense of presence, order, and stability, even in darkness, cultivating a comfort in the repetition, subtle variation, and gentle predictability of their routines, while the transition from evening to deep night was marked less by dramatic change than by the gradual fading of sounds, the lowering of activity, and the increasing prominence of sensory cues such as temperature shifts, distant animal calls, and the occasional movement of wind or clouds, all of which contributed to a hypnotic, immersive awareness of continuity. And in the quiet, repetitive progression of tasks and observations, villagers prepared themselves for sleep with a calm, measured sense of completion, a gentle satisfaction in the completion of ordinary work, and an awareness that despite the fragility of life, the patterns of care, labor, and attention ensured the ongoing stability of household and village alike. And as the night deepened further, sleep naturally became the final, encompassing rhythm of the day, a continuation of the repetitive, measured, and immersive cadence that had structured the hours from dawn, through labor, observation, and domestic care, into evening, so that by surrendering to rest, the villagers participated in that. As the night in a medieval village reached its deepest hours, the world seemed to exist in a serene, almost suspended quiet, where every movement, sound, and shadow became part of an enduring, hypnotic rhythm that had shaped the lives of villagers for generations. And during these late hours, most of the village was at rest, the hearths burning low, animals quieted in their pens, and households wrapped in blankets of straw, wool, or linen, while those still awake moved slowly, deliberately, and quietly, performing the smallest tasks that ensured continuity and comfort, such as checking fires, arranging bedding, preparing water for the morning, or tending to a sick family member with careful, repetitive attention, and even these minor actions were performed in a meditative, immersive manner, where the sound of a creaking floorboard, the faint hiss of embers, or the rustle of clothing and straw became integral to the perception of time and place. And in these hours, sensory awareness was heightened in subtle ways. The cool air on skin, the faint warmth of lingering fire, the scent of smoke mingled with herbs and dried food, the soft murmur of wind through trees or across thatched roofs, and the occasional distant call of nocturnal animals, all forming a tapestry of quiet stimuli that encouraged reflection and attentiveness without urgency, while children, if awake, often observe silently, learning through repetition and presence, gradually absorbing the rhythms of work, care, and observation that defined medieval life. And elders might continue to speak in measured tones, recounting practical wisdom, advice on herbal remedies, details of local history, or guidance on household management, all offered slowly, calmly, and repeatedly, reinforcing patterns of learning, patience, and attention. And as the night progressed, the natural rhythms of the environment served as both clock and guide. The position of the moon, the pattern of stars, the changing sound of wind, or the subtle variations in temperature, all providing markers for the passage of hours in a world largely without mechanical timekeeping. And through this slow, immersive engagement with the ordinary, repetitive, and quiet aspects of life, villagers cultivated a sense of continuity, stability, and calm, appreciating the gentle, predictable patterns that connected them to family, community, and nature. And even in times of minor difficulty, such as tending an ailing animal, a household task that took longer than expected, or a disturbance in the weather, the response was deliberate, patient, and methodical, reflecting a worldview shaped by centuries of careful observation, repetition, and attentiveness. And as the deepest hours of night approached, sleep gradually encompassed every household member, a natural conclusion to the day's continuous, immersive rhythm of labor, care, observation, and minor domestic tasks. And in sleep, villagers participated fully in the repetitive cadence that defined life itself, a gentle, hypnotic cycle of days and nights, work and rest, attention and stillness, which would repeat tomorrow and the day after, providing both comfort and continuity in a world governed not by drama but by the enduring, methodical, and profoundly ordinary movements of life. And as darkness persisted, the village existed as a quiet, breathing organism, each household and individual contributing to the soft, unbroken rhythm of existence, where repetition, attention, and careful observation maintained not only physical well-being but a subtle, immersive awareness of time, place, and connection, a rhythm that, though rarely recorded in chronicles, defined the lived experience of medieval life in all its calm, methodical, and soothing ordinariness, creating a gentle, hypnotic immersion in the quiet continuity of human existence.